Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. You are listening to a Passover sermon by Rabbi Dr. Michael Berenbaum.
Many years ago, I was interested in writing a book on the way in which the secular Israelis were redeveloping Jewish tradition. We then had a double revolution. One was the revolution of the 67 war, which brought a very different type of Jewish nationalism to the fore. And the other was the 77 revolution, which put out the Labor Party with its secular Zionism and replaced it with a very different form of Zionism. So the project never got off before a few drafts of what would have been a very interesting book. Another fellow did a segment of that when he wrote on kibbutz Judaism, but kibbutz Judaism did not end up shaping itself. That sensitized me to several things. Number one, and we all saw it last night and the night before, which is that the Haggadah is always a dialogue between where we are, where we want to be, and what the sacred text has been. So that we have to look in each generation for the commentary in a very basic way to understand the struggle with, the wrestling with, the embracing, the contrasting, the engaging with the traditional text. I noticed something very interesting when I looked in the original generation of Israelis, meaning the generation that came to be after 48. In the original generation of Israelis in the secular Haggadot, there was no appearance of the word Dayenu. The word in the prayer Dayenu, which I remember as a prayer that even as a little kid you could recall and embrace, the prayer Dayenu the song Dayenu did not appear there. And I realized something very important at that point, which is that for a revolutionary generation, they're not going to be happy with half steps. If God had taken us, but he didn't make judgment on the Egyptians, it would have been enough. They're not going to be happy with half steps, so they don't begin to say Dayenu. The interesting thing about growing older is that I've begun to appreciate very deeply the two segments of the song Dayenu. One is the idea that there comes a moment in which you have to accept what you have and say, this is sufficient. And then the other half is the second prayer, Alachat Kama Tova Ukfula Umechupelet Lamakom Aleinu. That not only have you taken small steps, but small steps have become larger steps and larger steps and larger steps. And gradually you are really embraced the idea that you've come both a long way and you've achieved something significant, and that has to be sufficient. Pirkei Avot says, Ezehu ha'ashir ha'samech b'chalko. Who is the wealthy person, who is one who is happy with his lot? And I think part of what we have to embrace again at this moment, looking with the weakening of the coronavirus, not yet its end, is the sense that we have in this prayer of gratitude as a fundamental notion of religious consciousness. We have received many different blessings. Any one of them might have been sufficient. But the cumulative sense of what we've received should be what? Dayenu. And the sense of Tova Ukfula Lamakom Aleinu. We have received again single and double goodness and goodness and goodness. And part of the fundamental values that we have to recover in a world in which religion is being given a bad name by the manifestations of religion that we've seen, not only within this country but also within Israel, where a religious party regards itself as a racist party. is the sense that we have to recover several fundamental attitudes, and one of them has to be gratitude. Second point that came from my weekly or semi-weekly walks with my partner, Gordon Bernat Cunin, is that the Exodus story is a particular story that we have made universal. People speak the language of freedom, and they know the word Pharaoh and Moses, and they know the crossing of the sea. And by the way, the interesting thing is in the traditional Haggadah Dayenu, there are 3 parts that are intriguing. Dayenu has 15 steps to it, 15 motions of Dayenu. The Seder has 15 Kadesh Urachatz, is a 15-fold ladder to freedom. And the other is, if you look in the tradition, in the Torah, you see 15 stages in the Az Yashir, and you ladder through the sea by taking 15 stages. So Dayenu, the sense of having achieved something, becomes significant. But Gordon asked a very interesting question yesterday. What would the Exodus story have been without Sinai? And I suggest it still would be a story of freedom and of nationalism, but not yet a story of mission. And the mission is what? To become a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And that's the unrealized dream, but the continuing mission of the Jewish people. Chag Sameach.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.